Ben Hodges in Frankfurt, thank you so much for being on the show again in Buitenhof. First of all, what is your response to the US attack on Iran last night?
Well, I have to say that I did not expect the president to do it. So credit to him and also to everyone else that maintained the level of secrecy before this mission. Obviously, I'm impressed with the what our Air Force has accomplished and the other forces in the region. What matters now is what effect did they achieve? We don't know yet. Maybe we won't know for a few more days what the actual battle damage assessment says, and then also what comes next. What are the regional political implications?
Okay, we're going to talk about that as well. But first, the military aspect of this, the B-2s. With on board the bunker busters, how successful can they be on these nuclear installations, 3 of them in Iran?
Well, based on the initial reporting, number one, it looks like every one of the aircraft got to their target and got out of there. So always good when you don't suffer any losses on your side. Secondly, I think they would not have done this if they were not confident that there was a high degree of success, a likely success. I think there was a total of 12 of these bombs that were dropped across the 3 different targets, plus some cruise missiles were launched against one of the sites. And we don't know what else is being done there. I would expect they achieved good success, but I cannot yet say whether or not they completely destroyed the target.
So you said, I didn't expect Trump to do this. What do you think made him decide the last 24 hours, okay, this is the moment that we have to attack Iran? And what was the role of Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, in this decision?
It's a great question that I really can't answer. The president, of course, has been under pressure, I think, from Prime Minister Netanyahu. The Israelis have obviously wanted this to happen for a long time. You know that our president was facing a divided domestic political base, even within his own supporters. A lot of people were against this, whereas others were totally in favor of always supporting Israel. The president does not have a typical cabinet around him, even though people were there in your picture. He doesn't have the same sort of intelligence and national security advisors present that one would expect. So I don't know what it was that finally put him over or helped him decide. But in my view, it had to be that he was convinced there was a very high degree of likely success.
Yes. Also, maybe I'm interested in what you have to say to this. Prime Minister Netanyahu played Trump like a fiddle?
It's hard to say. I mean, honestly, I didn't think that they had a very close relationship on the president's last trip to the Middle East. He went to, I think, 3 different Arab countries, but did not visit Israel while he was there. So I'm not so sure that this is the result of skillful diplomacy or maneuvering by Prime Minister Netanyahu, although obviously that would have had some effect. But these things don't happen in a vacuum. The president would have been aware that China is very concerned about any disruption to oil coming out of the region. Most of Iran's oil goes to China. The Russians will have a view on all of this. They would not be very happy about it, although there may be some benefit to them as U.S. support for Ukraine is distracted or diverted to this operation. I can't figure out exactly where all the pieces fit together.
Yeah. Is this strike of the U.S. on Iran in the national interest of the U.S.?
Well, certainly, I think destroying Iran's potential for making a nuclear weapon has been an objective for multiple administrations. So I would say, yes, it is in the interest of the United States and others who would potentially be targeted or threatened by an eventual Iranian nuclear weapon. So in that case, yes. The broader interest, though, is, as I keep saying, what comes next? I mean, this is not something where you just go in and turn off the switch and then everything is solved. There will be implications, perhaps positive, perhaps negative, the president has to explain what is the strategic outcome he really wants.
And as we know, previous administrations have attacked after 9/11 Afghanistan and Iraq. That ended 20 years later in a total disaster and an evacuation from Kabul with images that nobody would like to see in the Pentagon and in the White House. Now, as you said, what is the end game here? What is the plan that President Trump has for this situation?
Well, I'm not sure that they do. And nobody in America, not just the Pentagon, nobody in America wants to see another long, protracted war somewhere in the Middle East. And in both the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, we failed with multiple administrations. We failed to clearly identify the long-term strategic objective we were trying to achieve. And I think that's something that I hope we don't repeat that mistake, because that's how you get stuck in somewhere and then find it very difficult to get out. So it's hard for the national leadership to clearly identify the strategic outcome that you want. You have to think it all the way through. I certainly hope that we are not going to be involved in anything that leads to regime change. I will shed no tears if the Ayatollah and his regime are gone. I mean, they're terrible. They've killed hundreds of American soldiers and Marines. They treat their own people terribly. But getting directly involved in regime change, I think, is something we don't want to do, should not do. And I hope that's not something that we're contemplating.
Right. So you're saying there is a risk, if you don't think this through, that it could end in a nightmare, like we have seen in Afghanistan and Iraq. So what is the military capability of Iran right now by, for example, hitting US bases in the Middle East? You got many of them in Kuwait, in Qatar, in the Emirates, in Syria, in Iraq. It's endless. Will they strike back on US soil?
So you're right that there are a lot of potential targets the Iranians could strike in the region. They also, of course, may attempt or could attempt to block traffic coming in and out through the Straits of Hormuz, which would have significant implications for a lot of countries, not just the United States. But it's interesting that the Iranian Navy has not been as heavily attacked as have the missile launchers and other capabilities of Iran. So I don't know what Israel's long-term plan is. We do know that the Iranians still have several hundred ballistic missiles that have not been used or destroyed. I don't know the Israelis know exactly where they all are still being stored, but I would expect that the Iranians have some capacity. But again, this is not going to happen in a vacuum. I think you're going to hear a lot of diplomatic outreach now from the U.S. administration and from other countries in the region that would like to see this brought to an end as quickly as possible. And the Ayatollah has a choice to make. Does his own survival, or does he try to stay in power for his own reasons? Do the Chinese persuade him, offer him a place to go? And then finally, do the Iranian people? Do they see that finally the regime is weakened and vulnerable enough that they could, in fact, finally successfully throw it off themselves?
So many questions are open here. Do you think, that was my initial question, that Iran still has the military capability to hit US targets?
Yes, absolutely they do. The fact that there are several hundred ballistic missiles that are still out there somewhere. I don't know how many launchers are there. The Israelis, of course, have done a superb job eliminating much of that capability, but there will still be some launchers. And of course, the Iranians have their proxies, not only the Houthis that we have failed to eliminate over the past several months. They could still be doing attacks into the Red Sea. The Iranian Navy, I think, still seems to be mostly intact. So there's a lot of options that they might execute, but it's hard to see anything that would help change the dynamics in play in favor of Iran. I think they have been so severely degraded. I'm just not sure that their population is going to just keep going along with this.
Yeah. Is it a problem, you think, that the War Powers Act in 1973 was established, which says that you have to inform Congress, the president has to do it if he starts and when he starts a war. He didn't do that, Trump. So will that be a problem in the US?
I think it should be a problem. I mean, this president seems to disregard what the law says a lot. Some of the Republican members of the Congress were notified, but not all of the ones, not the Democrats that are like the heads of committees, oversight committees. And so, the president needs, at some point, he's going to need the bipartisan support of the Congress to do what he wants to do.
Is this then an illegal war?
Well, I think that the president is going to have to be held accountable for complying with the law. And this is where a Republican-led Congress so far has not done a very good job of holding the Republican president accountable.
Ben, one short question. Will the president still attend the NATO summit in The Hague, you think, in the middle of a war?
I certainly hope so. The United States needs allies now more than ever. And even though the president has been, in his first term and now, it creates a lot of uncertainty amongst allies. The fact is, the United States needs allies, and we would be foolish to turn our back on NATO at a time when we are stretched across the European theater, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific theater. So I certainly hope he will turn up. I think Secretary General Rutte has done a very good job of managing this to keep the president willing to come. And now, if the president, if his real goal is to get a deal with the Iranians, then it would seem wise to be in Europe with all of the European allies that could help in that field, in that diplomatic way as well.
Yes. Ben Hodges, thanks a million again from Frankfurt for your answers to my questions today. Thanks a million.
Thanks for the privilege, Tom.
Bij ons is steeds in de studio Jaap Scheffen, voormalig secretaris-generaal van de NAVO en oud-minister van Buitenlandse Zaken. U heeft meegeluisterd. Wat u alle drie tot nu toe zegt, Hodges, u en Sigrid Kaag, is dat er eigenlijk geen plan is voor hierna van Israël en de Amerikaanse president Trump. Hoe gevaarlijk is dat in uw visie?
Nou, dat is heel gevaarlijk. Maar nogmaals, we zullen moeten afwachten hoe Iran nu gaat reageren. De president Trump die blaast de victorie al. Dat alles is geregeld. Hij zal ongetwijfeld verder doorgaan. Israël zal doorgaan met aanval op Iran. Iran zal reageren. Maar nogmaals, er is geen strategie. Maar die is er ook niet voor Gaza.
Laat hij ook zien, president Trump heeft gezegd tijdens zijn campagne voor het presidentschap, we moeten stoppen met die forever wars. We moeten terug naar ons eigen land en ons nergens meer mee bemoeien. Vannacht heeft hij laten zien dat hij toch ingrijpt als er kennelijk een gevaar is. Is dit ook een boodschap aan China? Jongens, ik ben hiertoe in staat. Als je Taiwan binnenwandelt, dan krijg je van hetzelfde koekje, van hetzelfde deeg een koekje. Ja, en als ik uw vraag probeer te beantwoorden, dan denk ik ook, dit is ook wat we nu meemaken de afgelopen 12, 24 uur, is een kwestie van ego's. De Israëlische premier heeft een redelijk groot ego. De Amerikaanse president heeft een redelijk groot ego. En ik denk dat bij de Amerikaanse president, maar ik interpreteer nu, ik speculeer nu, zeg ik er eerlijk bij, is het ook uiteindelijk, wil ik ook in staat zijn om, als ik dat vind en als ik daar aanleiding toe zie, de volle kracht van de Amerikaanse macht op Iran te doen neerdalen in dit geval. In welk opzicht is hij anders dan de Amerikaanse presidenten waar u mee
dat hij, ik denk dat president Trump zich ook redelijk thuis voelt bij mensen als Xi Jinping, als Netanyahu, als Poetin. Sterke, hele krachtige leiders vinden ze zelf met enorm grote ego's, die de gelegenheid niet voorbij laten gaan om op het moment suprême hun macht werkelijk tot gelding te brengen. Dat psychologische effect tussen de oren van die leiders, dat moet je wat mij betreft meewegen. En 2 is, als ik kijk naar de huidige situatie en ik kijk naar Iran, laten we niet vergeten wat voor soort regime dat is. Laten we niet vergeten dat ook 7 oktober plaatsvond, dat Israël daar werd ontmenselijkt, gedehumaniseerd. Dat geeft Israël niet het recht om Palestijnen te dehumaniseren, zeg ik er meteen bij. Maar laten we niet vergeten hoe het allemaal begon met grote steun van Iran. Hoe die regio gedestabiliseerd werd met grote steun van Iran.
Hebben ze nog vrienden?
Dat moet je er wel bij zeggen en bij denken wat mij betreft.
Heeft de geestelijk leider Al-Khamenei nog vrienden eigenlijk in de rest van de wereld na wat er vannacht gebeurd is? Zijn er nog bondgenoten?
Buitengewoon weinig. Generaal Hodges noemde ze, de Houthis zijn nog niet uitgeschakeld. De golfmonarchieën en Saudi-Arabië zullen angstig zijn en bezorgd zijn over wat hen zou kunnen overkomen.
Maar China, bijvoorbeeld Rusland slaat grootscheeps drones in van Iran.
Iran trouwens was ook een massale droneleverancier in de richting van Poetin. Dus ook om even die nefaste effecten van Iran te onderstrepen. China komt in het spel, want China, denk ik, zit niet te wachten op mijnen leggen in de straat van Hormuz en het blokkeren van de straat van Hormuz. Poetin wel, want dan gaat de olieprijs omhoog en dan kan hij zijn olie makkelijker en tegen een hogere prijs kwijt. Terwijl wij Europeanen juist bezig waren om dat te voorkomen. Dus China heeft daar niet zoveel belang bij, als het zou zijn de afsluiting van de straat van Hormuz.
Spreken zo verder. We gaan nu naar luitenant-generaal. Bedankt voor het kijken. Vond je dit een goed gesprek? Vergeet je vooral niet te abonneren, een like of een comment achter te laten. Dat kan natuurlijk ook.
Als je kijkt naar de regio en als je kijkt naar de politieke hoofdrolspelers, dan is wat mij betreft de Israëlische premier Netanyahu de poppenspeler.